but just want to let you know that we are recording. We do look forward to hearing from Virgil here this morning. It's definitely going to be a great opportunity for everybody to learn. Like he mentioned before, I think a few of you were on the phone call this morning. He does want to keep this interactive, does want to make sure, like, if you have a question, ask it away. You can either use the chat feature if you're on the video portion, or just unmute yourself and go ahead and just ask it to Virgil here as well. We're happy to take those questions and happy to facilitate that. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and just turn it over to Virgil here.
Well, thank you, Paul and Adam and all of the Tennessee PGA for giving me this option to come on and share information that I see. And in some ways, I'm always trying to do something different, because I think that everybody's talked about the golf swing so much that it's literally insane. And you can look that kind of stuff up pretty easy. But I try to show you what's going on inside my head and where the game is in my mind so that we can move forward. So I'm going to use a lot of information that was been sent to me by Lou Stagner and Scott Fawcett. And I'm going to show you what goes on inside my head, not only as a teaching professional coaching kids, but I'm also the coach at Ensworth, and the things that I use there to help these kids understand how they need to become better players. So we're going to start by using some analytical data, and then we're going to use that data from the tee shot to the hole, and then try to create ideas off of practice so that people can get better. And they, without a doubt, know they're working on something that is relevant and irrefutable. And if there's one thing, if you've ever been to see Scott Fawcett talk, you cannot get in an argument with Scott Fawcett, because he is ready to shove statistical information right down your throat to back it up. And that's why I love him so much, because that's kind of how I'm wired. So the first thing I want you to see is how much one shot makes a difference. And we're always trying to figure out how to save shots. And obviously a PGA Tour player is very different than the beginner, middle handicap America, and even junior golfers trying to achieve college golf scholarship status and onward and upward. But just to give you an idea how much one shot can make a difference at every level, it's easier to look at the top, one, because the PGA Tour keeps those statistics, but know that all of these are the best players in the world, not middle handicap America. So the first thing I want you to see is this right here, which is one shot per tournament on average cost a tour player $9,300 a tournament. One shot. And if you do that 10 times, that's 93,000, obviously. And if you do it 20 times, it's 186,000. But in 2018, which is where some of the information is, if Ricky Fowler had shot one shot less per day than he did, he would have made $1 million more than he did that year, and won 4 more times. One shot a day. So we're always looking, where are we going to find these strokes? And that's where I'm at. Now, obviously, tour players are trying to find 0.2 shots here, 0.15 shots there. But, the average person that we're teaching all the way up and even into the high school level, we're able to find 1, 2, 3 shots in a category. And that's how you make an impact on people, is once, if you can validate the information and then give them an idea about what they want to do and how to become better. Now we got something. So the first thing that, obviously, it's a very common argument going on right now is the golf ball going too far? And is the ball going too far? Are we hitting it too far? So here is the first thing that's pretty potent. This is the driving distance on the PGA Tour. Okay, so now this is really important. Take a look down there. It says the tour players are averaging 311.7 yards if they're ranked 1 to 10 on the tour. Players 51 to 60 are averaging 297 yards, or just less than 5% shorter than the top 10 players. That's interesting. Okay, so we know that distance is important, but we don't know how much important until we see this. LPGA Tour, the top 10 players are averaging 273 yards, and players 51 to 60, 257 yards. That's a 6.5% change. That's a lot. That's even more than the PGA Tour. So what are we seeing? The best players drive the golf ball the longest. And every talent level down in the money list is another 4 to 7% shorter than the top 10 players. So now it's becoming obvious that power is the first place we can look to help people, because we know through Mark Brody's work that if you can find somebody 25 more yards, now it's not easy to find Rory 25 more yards, but it is definitely easier to find Bob the Builder and Miss Bafufnik 25 yards when they're 11 degrees over the top, to get him to hit him in a better position and get more yards. But this is the one that kind of was amazing to me. This information is from Arcos. This is the average drive of middle handicap America. So what do we see? 0 to 5 handicaps are hitting at 244 to 245. That's amazing. But if you're looking at a 11 to 15 handicap, they're hitting at 220. That is Arcos data on how far people hit the golf ball for real. That's a problem. That's a big problem, because most of them play from tee boxes way too far back and make the game more difficult than it needs to be. So when I'm looking at anybody that's coming to see me or anybody on my team, the first thing I'm looking at is driving efficiency. We know that if you can hit it 25 yards longer than you were, you're better being in the rough than you were to be in the fairway where you were in the past. It is a full standard deviation closer to the hole. So if you hit it in the fairway, your proximity to the hole goes way up, and your chances to make easy pars and birdies go way up. And if you hit it in the rough, you're at the exact same shot percentage and score as if you were 25 yards back in the fairway. So I study like crazy to understand how to create more power from people, how to create optimum launch and spin conditions with their driver, so that they can, one, who doesn't like to hit the golf ball far enough? Everybody wants, I mean, I hit it really long and I would take 15 more yards right now in a millisecond. Everybody wants to hit it longer. So I spend a lot of time understanding the dynamics of power from all different bodies, people that can create huge amounts of rotational force. Some people can't do that, and theirs comes from arm drop and thrust off the ground. But the average person could be benefited by merely just delivering the golf club on a shallower plane. And that's where I spend most of my time wanting to fix people, is let's get that golf club traveling in a position where we can hit the center of the face and have more control over our golf ball off the tee. Because if we can do that, we're off to a great start. And my history on this, and I would probably say, I know that I've taught 20,000 people since I've been a teacher here in Tennessee. A large percentage of those people got better first because they hit the ball longer. So that is the first thing. Interesting data also from Scott and Lou, which is the ball speed numbers of the best players and the carry distances. They are all the same. So this is ball speed, height of the drive, and average carry distance. We all know that speed equals spin and launch. So the harder you hit it, the higher it flies. So when you look at this number, they're all basically the exact same curve. The best players hit the ball longer, higher, and carry it longer. Now we're starting, if you want to be better, you have to hit it longer. So there's the first group. So once we get hitting it longer and we're finding fairways, that allows us to think about how we use driver. A lot in the past, certainly when we were growing up, were thought that it was more important to be in the fairway with 3-wood or you can remember back in the days of a 1-iron, put the ball in play. Well, they have done an unbelievable job of dispelling that. And if you follow any of these guys, they'll talk to you till they're blue in the face about hitting driver every hole that you can hit driver, unless there is OB in the way of 65 yards in width. If you have 65 yards of runway, you're hitting driver everywhere you go. But if you have a crossing water, like a creek, high grass, fairway bunkers, or obstructive trees, those are the only things that make you not hit driver. So this is a graph from 2007 to 2019 on all the holes on the PGA Tour that you are forced to lay up, or there's a risk reward opportunity that is high. So this is 43 holes over 13 years. Of those 43 holes, 8 of them, and I will show this in a second, 8 of those holes, if you laid up, you had a better scoring average, but by 0.08 shots. On the holes that they hit driver, so 35 out of 43, the driver group scored better by nearly 0.3 shots. So the scoring average on those holes are driver group on par 4s 3.6 and layup 3.84. So now we have strategy. As soon as people can drive the ball more proficiently, they're willing to take on more statistical risk because they know that it's the right play. What does that lead to? That leads to more confidence. Now we're starting to get into the things that we can't touch that make people better. When they're driving the golf ball longer, they're able to take advantage of holes they've never been able to take advantage of before. Their confidence goes way up. When you get their confidence way up, 2 things are going on. They keep working on their game because they see things are going better. They're also buying more golf clubs that are fit for them, gloves, balls, etc. So it's a combination of that. Confidence is our business lifeblood, because without that, people get stale. And if people aren't improving at all, there's no such thing as staying still. So if you're putting time in and you're the same as you were 10 years ago, you're actually worse because of the amount of work that you put in to stay the same. So that's really important information right there. So if you teach anybody that wants to be great, one of the first things you recognize is how distorted good players' views on how close tour players hit it to the hole. And to not bore you with all the stats, I'm just going to give you the ones that were revealing to us. So from 150 yards from the fairway, tour player versus a scratch golfer. So basically a tour player versus us. The tour player hits the green from 150 in the middle of the fairway 76% of the time. And a scratch golfer hits it 61% of the time. The average proximity to the hole when they hit the green, tour player's 20 feet, scratch player 23 feet. But when the green is missed, the tour player's 38 feet from the hole, and the scratch golfer is 60 feet from the hole. So there's this graph right here. That graph shows that there's a very large disparity between the tour player and us, let alone us and the average golfer. So that's a pretty interesting one. But the one that always gets us for sure, if we're teaching the game, is the proximity to the hole from 100 yards from the fairway. I don't know about you, but I got 14 boys on my golf team that when they hit a wedge to 12 feet, they're ready to break something and kill somebody. But the average tour, this is unbelievable. The average proximity of all shots from 100 yards for a PGA Tour player, 18.5 feet. 18.5 feet. And the best players in the world hit the green 83% of the time from 100 yards. Proximity to the hole is 15 feet when they hit the green. 15 feet when they hit the green. We hit it, PGA, scratch player, 18 feet. So it's not that much different. But when we miss the green, tour players average 32 feet from the hole, and the scratch golfer averages 56 feet from the hole, nearly double. So that means obviously their bad is way better than our bad. Our good is almost as good as theirs. Our bad is not. So that allows us to help people put expectation values in perspective. And I would say of all the things that I was able to do to help my team this year was to keep people's emotions out of their decision-making processes based around statistical data that allows them to see that even if that shot was poor, it's still better than a scratch golfer's average outcome. And they're not scratch golfers yet. Some of them are, some of them are not. And that made a huge difference on them being willing to forgive themselves on errant shots. And the longer I can keep emotions out of decision-making processes in life, let alone golf, the better everybody's outcome is going to be. So to me, that is one of the most important pieces. Is you can now see how I understand how much the brain plays a role in performance, both physically, emotionally, and mentally. So, and how these things come together and create a scenario that not only are we making them better, we are making them believe they are better, and we are showing them how they are getting better. And that is how you build people's confidence in themselves and trust in you. And that is what we're here for. That's our job. So when we start looking at numbers or statistical information to help people understand what they want to do with their game, I'm always looking for them to help me at first. How many fairways are you hitting, and how many tee shots are you hitting that are not obstructed or penalized? My rule on my team is that if we hit 14 drives, unobstructed, unpenalized, we hit no extra wedge shots. If you have a wedge in your hand, you should only hit one wedge a hole, and we don't three putt. I've had it set up that I don't think anybody can shoot over 75 if you do that. And in my 3 years of coaching here at Ensworth, if any one of my players did that, nobody shot over 73. But I'm willing to give the fact that if we're playing Kiowa Island, it might be 75. But that's really important. So when we start looking at greens and regulation, I want to break 80, coach. Well, the number, and I have arrows under the 80, 75, 70, and 65 numbers. So when we look at what it takes to drive the golf ball, to play golf well and shoot low scores, we see what we have to have. We have to hit 7 to 8 greens in regulation if you want to break 80. Are we not hitting 8 green in regulation because we're playing tees too far back for us? Are we not hitting 8 greens in regulation because we do not drive the golf ball well enough? Do we not hit 8 greens because we don't know how far we carry the ball in the air? Do we not hit 8 greens because we have a false understanding of our predictability of curvature and distance? That is the actual key, is that I'm trying to diagnose where the mechanical failure from the brain to the muscle occurs in the player. Almost always, it has to do with the fact that they are poorly informed of how far they carry the golf ball. And a close second is nearly all of them are playing at a distance that it's not appropriate for their talent. So it's really hard to hit 8 green regulation if you hit 13 hybrids or fairway woods into par fours. That's not a conducive way to score. If you want to shoot 75, you have to hit 9.5. So that means every 2 rounds of golf, you'd have to hit 19 greens. To break 70 or shoot 70, it's just under 12. And to shoot 65, it's just under 14. So as you raise the bar it is obvious that every scoring level has to be stemming from they are driving it longer and more effectively, getting them more short clubs into greens, and all at the same time, obviously, you're working on their technique to do so. But when you drive the ball farther and you're hitting less club into greens, those numbers generally have to go up. And then when you provide them the confidence of knowing how far they carry their golf ball, you provide them an understanding of their, what Scott Fawcett calls the shotgun, the shot dispersion. If you show them their shot dispersion and how, if they hit 100 shots and their 150-yard club is the 8-iron, and their best shot is 153, and their pull is 156, and their heel fan is 148, 146, and you show them 100 shots, and you're trying to put those 100 balls, as many of those balls on the green, unpenalized, they can start to understand that they're not snipers. They're not imagining the one shot. They're imagining the shotgun going off. That is how we begin to destroy golf courses mathematically. I'm a math guy. We attack golf through the understanding of how far we hit the ball and the predictability of the curve. That's not groundbreaking, but that's what's going on inside my head every day that I do what I do. So I sense that when I show this next picture, that yes, the PGA Tour, like, it is a prerequisite to be on the PGA Tour. You have to have a great short game. And I tell my kids here at Ensworth that if I had to guess that maybe the worst short game player, because he has multiple putting grips and chips cross-handed, is Vijay Singh, that Vijay Singh would wear your butts out here on this short game area. That is a prerequisite. You can't get on the PGA Tour with a bad short game. But we know that there's a lot of people that struggle with the short chips and pitches, and there's a lot of room to make people improve around the green. But I really didn't know this number. But these are broken down in 6-year increments from 92 to today. But the best players in the world are only getting up and down 61% of the time. And that is stretched out over a 20-year time span. That is remarkable. And there's not much difference. And this is, I've talked about this, and this is what blew me away. There's not much difference between the guy who keeps his card. The guy who keeps his card, number 125 on the money list, is getting up and down 58% of the time. Rory McIlroy is getting up and down 62% of the time. So if he misses 100 greens, that probably takes him 7 or 8 tournaments to do. He's only scored 3 shots better than the guy who's 125 on the money list. So statistically speaking, it doesn't look like there's that much to gain working on the short game of a PGA Tour player. But we know for a fact there's a lot of room to work around the short game for the average golfer. So let's backtrack it to approach shots. We know for a fact that up and downs that occur going downhill are significantly less percentage than up and downs going uphill. So the ability to manage your shot making, even if you're not a great player, knowing where below the hole is, knowing where you give yourself the most amount of green to work with is, and it goes in that order. Chipping uphill is way better than chipping downhill with a lot of green to work with, but not that much. So that if the front pin and there's really no place safe to leave it short, you want to leave yourself with the most amount of green to work with. If most people struggle because they put themselves in a position that Tiger couldn't get up and down from. So I'm always like, I'm moving forward with the shots. We're getting closer to the green, but we're still constantly having to go back and see that sometimes the statistics are showing that, yes, we're not getting up and down as nicely as we'd like. But is it our short game that is hurting us? In some circumstances, the answer is yes. But in some circumstances, the answer is absolutely not. It is your inability to control your golf ball because you can't predict what it's going to do effectively, to give yourself the best opportunities to get up and down. And this would also go for putting. I remember having a great conversation with David Ogren, who won one time on the PGA Tour and is a great buddy of mine. And he for the longest time, it really bothered him. He missed qualifying for one of his U.S. Opens. He shot 65 the first day and hit 14 greens. And then he hit 16 greens the second round and shot 73 and said to himself that he putted terribly. But whether it be due to pin placements or just happenstance of a tour player, 14 of those 16 putts that David Ogren had the second round of the U.S. Open qualifier came from above the hole. Whereas 12 of 14 in the first round came from below the hole. So and this is what we had as conversation on a radio show that I had. He beat himself up for years thinking that he was a bad putter, when in all actuality, he putted maybe even better because of where he putted from. He just couldn't make any birdies from the position he put himself in. So once again, it's easy. I mean, how many times have we heard putt? I can't chip. I was 0 for 9 up and downs today. Well, how many of those 9 came from short side dead, high rough, in a position where we had no green to work with? Because that's not your sand wedge, lob wedge, gap wedge's fault. That is your strategy going into shots fault. And you're now having to pay the statistical price with your short game, and you can't get up and down. That's serious stuff right there. And when you have the ability to help people understand the numbers, it's not just the numbers, it's understanding where the numbers arise so that you can make people better. That's the key. But to go into putting, which is where I had one little thing I wanted to throw out there just real quick. It's easy to see when you look at those numbers I just showed for short game. But this number should be easy for us to dictate why Tiger Woods would be considered the greatest that we've ever seen. On 3 separate occasions, 05, 08, and 09, Tiger Woods' up and down percentage differential between he and number 2. So one was Luke Donald, one was Phil Mickelson, and one was Brian Gay. The difference between Tiger Woods and number 2 was greater than number 2 and dead last in up and down percentage. Scott Fawcett will tell you is because Tiger Woods missed it in the right spot at a higher percentage than anybody other than Jack Nicklaus ever has. Has no way of tracking Jack Nicklaus's rounds because they weren't all covered. But he does know, even before ShotLink covered Tiger Woods in 2000 and 2002, in those great years, he went back and found every shot Tiger hit and how far it was within reasonable distance. And that's what he found, is that not only was Tiger Woods getting up and down at a higher rate, he was crushing them because he was having easy up and downs because of his management into the green. So that's important to understand that and how the differentials can get so high. Now we go to putting. Obviously, putting is where most of these strokes will lie. And after driving, I think that putting is the first place I always go to take people's strokes away. But I do think it's interesting that there are only two distances that the difference between the make percentage of the best and the next best is more than 4%. And that occurs from 4 feet to 5 feet and 5 feet to 6 feet. And Mark Brody says that with the average golfer, it's significantly higher than that, but it also goes to 3 feet. And my conversations that I've had with Mark Brody, he says that if you want to give the average golfer massive help to their handicap, give them multiple drills so they don't get bored, excuse me, on making 3-footers. If you want to get a high school student and a college player to dominate their talent level, you have to do that at 4 feet. And if you're a PGA Tour player and you're struggling, the first place you look is 5 feet. And here's a pretty good example why. The best players in the world, 1 to 10, at 5 feet, make 77%. Players 51 to 60 are 71%. At player 150, so they're losing their card, it is 9% different. 9%. So I can't tell you how many times I've seen statistics on, with 2 holes remaining. I certainly remember the one where Mickelson won the Players' Championship, and he was on 16 and he made a putt, and he was 66 for 66 inside of 8 feet for the week. Well, that means that the person who finished making the cut, 77, missed 8 more putts than him inside that range, because that's a very common range to have putts from. That's powerful. At 5 feet, I'm sorry, excuse me, at 4 feet, the numbers are eerily similar. It's 4% from the best player to the second best player, and a full 8% at the bottom. So we really could do a lot of help by coming up with creative ways for people to understand and appreciate the value of the short putt and work on it as such to make them a better scorer of the game. Lag putting, in my opinion, is one of the greatest skills that we can have, because as you get to be a better player, and with Scott's help, I bang this through these kids' head all the time. We are going to make people beat us. We are not going to beat ourselves. So what that means is that we're going to be playing to the fat side of the green a lot. We are going to be taking double bogeys out of play, and we are going to force people to make birdies to beat us. Well, we're going to do that. We have to feel comfortable to hit the ball to 30 feet and know we're going to 2-putt. And at the high school level, that is not a guarantee. At the college level, that is not a guarantee. And certainly in Middle Handicap America, that is not a guarantee. But that is pretty profound, because the difference between the best players and the next best players is the percentage of pars they make while playing to the fat side of the green without a 3-putt. So just to understand, the top 25 players at 30 feet leave their ball 22 inches from the hole. All other players leave that 26 inches from the hole, or 4 inches different. And when we go into the data, and you won't be able to see this because it's too dark, at 4 feet, 4 inches is 4% make. Why does that make a difference? Because that mirrors the statistics we just saw on the PGA Tour. Every inch is like a percent of miss. So I am pounding on my players' heads all the time. We have to drive the golf ball unobstructed and unpenalized. We have to know how far we carry the golf ball. We have to know a predictability of the shot dispersion. We have to understand the lay of the land to give ourselves the best chances of making easy pars. Stop trying to make birdies. Stop making bogeys. Working on our short game to have all the efficient shots, yes. But knowing that most of them, if we do it right, are just simple bump and runs, chip and runs, and soft pitches going up a hill, that makes a big difference. And to know that when we get to the point where we understand how far we hit it, we know our shot shape, and we are playing from the appropriate scoring distance of the golf course, we are going to be able to hit more greens. And what we see, and I'm absolutely positive all of you here can agree with this, we work on people's golf swings 100 times more than we work on their putting strokes. And they hit the golf ball better than they've ever hit it. And they score exactly the same as they've always scored. How is that the case? It's because they're terrible lag putters. And they're terrible short putters. And that's how I get people to work on their putting, is that most people come to see me to learn how to swing the golf club to the best of their ability. But after I get them to swing it to the best of their ability and their scoring average stays essentially the same, that allows me to show them these numbers, and it becomes very obvious where they're making their mistakes is they're not wanting to put their time and effort into the things that will take their score down because it's boring. But it's no longer boring when it's glaring, and they want to work on it and get better. The number of feet that is the equal of the equal chances of 3 putting and 1 putting is 32 feet. And Boo Weekley says emphatically that his whole strategy is the middle of the green never moves. He only practices 2 length putts. He practices 30-foot putts, uphill, downhill, and side hill, and he works inside of 5 feet. He only hits those 2 putts. That's, for most people who don't know Boo, most people would maybe not consider him the smartest tool in the shed, but that's as smart of a comment as I've ever heard when it comes to managing their time. He manages his time unbelievably well for his game. That's an important factor right there for sure. Some interesting numbers on like what would be considered a non-strokes lost lag putt. Historically speaking, Mark Brody told me that for every distance that we putt from, the average putt ends up 10% from the hole if it didn't go in. So at 30 feet, if it didn't go in, it's 3 feet from somewhere, left, right, short, long. The best players in the world at 35 feet, their strokes zero, the strokes gain 0 is 2 feet 6 inches. So it's about 7%. So it does make sense that a tour player is better than the average golfer by a handful of percent because they're obviously better than we are. But at the end of the day, even at 50 feet, the average PGA Tour player is leaving it to 4 feet, short, left, right, or long. So giving them good numbers and then putting either chalk lines or a circle or tees or something to let them know that if they hit a 50-foot putt, that their blanket is 8 feet wide, 4 feet in any direction from the hole. So they're not putting it to a 4 1/4 inch hole. They're putting it to an 8-foot hole. That's success. But most people think that that's not possible, that they have to hit it a 50-footer to 2 inches. If the best players don't do it, why would you be doing it? And it's not possible. So it's all about keeping your expectations in the right place at the right time at all times. And then these are, to me, this stuff is invaluable. The parts that most people don't understand. How much does wind affect the golf ball? It is not a 1-to-1 ratio. It does not help as much as it hurts. It hurts worse than it helps. So this is from Rich Hunt and Andrew Rice. So it's in Rich Hunt's book, Pro Golf Synopsis 2018. And it was tested and the evidence was given by Andrew Rice. This is how much wind affects the golf ball. So at 20 miles per hour into the wind, you lose 41 yards on an optimal drive, 33 yards on a 4-iron, 36 yards for a 7-iron, 37 yards for a 7-iron, and 35 yards on a pitching wedge. So essentially, almost 1.75 yards per mile per hour into the wind. If you're playing downwind, you gain 33 yards on an optimal drive. You gain 13 yards on a 4-iron, 18 yards on a 7-iron, and 19 yards on a pitching wedge. That's pretty serious. And this is off of a stock number with 0 wind that the average drive is 300.4, the 4-iron going 208, the 7-iron going 168, and the pitching wedge going 131. So that means Andrew Rice hitting his pitching wedge 131. When he's downwind 20 miles per hour, he will hit it 150. Into the wind, he will hit it 97 yards. I am absolutely positive there aren't many people that know that or implement that. But Tom Watson helped me before I went to the Tennessee PGA's Ireland Pro-Am in 2003 and 4. And Watson told me that the key for him winning Open championships was that he hit one more club than he thought he needed until he hit one over the green. And he's still waiting to hit one over the green. Of course, 4 years later, he did hit one over the green into the wind, and it ended up being stopping the greatest victory in the history of sport. Fascinating, nevertheless. But that was telling. So I go to Ireland, and I played really well both times. And that's what I did. If I thought that it was a 7-iron distance, and I think that it's a 5, I hit 4. And I never hit it over a green one time. And that made all the difference. An interesting stat as how you can use wind to help people. This is also from Andrew Rice, and this is over years of data. But when he hit golf, when he had players hitting into the wind, without him having to say anything, their attack angles doubled in practice because they felt like they needed to hit down on it more. That's pretty interesting. And if they move to a downwind scenario, their attack angle went shallower 50%. So his numbers show that the data that he's collected, the average no wind, the average attack angle of their 6-iron was 3.7. When he put them into a 20-mile-per-hour wind, it went to 5. And when he put them downwind, it went to 2.2 down. That's pretty serious. That's a sneaky way to hack training if you have the ability to move around a driving range, is that if people aren't hitting down on it, try to find them into the wind. If they're hitting down on it too much and they need to work on hitting up, get them downwind really good with a driver. Really good driver ideas right there. And then ultimately, the last piece is how much does temperature and altitude play in the ball flight? Pretty fascinating stuff. I'm more interested in the temperature than I am the altitude, because Nashville's 573 feet above sea level. Obviously, if we were going to play in Denver, I'd have more information. I'd be paying attention to that more. But for every 1,000 feet you're above, you are going to get 4.5 yards on a driver, 2.5 yards on a 4-iron, 2.7 yards on a middle iron, and 2.2 yards on a wedge for every 1,000 feet. But the one that interests me the most is temperature. Because most of the people that I teach base their yardages off a July day. 97 degrees. I hit my 7-iron, 166. Well, for every 10 degrees Fahrenheit that the temperature drops, you will lose 2 yards for driver and essentially 1.8 for every iron after that. So just right at 2. So if you're basing your numbers off of a 95-degree July day and you're playing in the state championship and it's 55 degrees, that means that you're hitting it 10 yards shorter with the same effectiveness, or 8 yards shorter, which is essentially 2/3 of a club for most people. And where do they miss it? Short. Why is water always short? It's a penalty because people often misjudge how far they hit it. So not only do people think they hit it longer than they really do, they also don't have any idea how much temperature changes it. So if most people pull the club off of the best shot they've ever hit, their shot dispersion is going to show that that's a flaw. And then if they're basing it off of a temperature that they played in, and it's much cooler than that, now they're really off. And if they're playing in wind, they're really, really off. When you put all of these pieces together and you present the information factually, it's easy to help people learn because they can't argue. And I think that's what we're all looking for, is the ability to communicate our information in a way that is statistically proven, full of the evidence that everybody's trying to be. Everybody wants to be Tiger, Rory, DJ. I think that that's really powerful. How do they do it? This is how they do it. You are not going, for the vast majority of people, like 99.9% of us, we are not going to teach that many people that hit it 330 like Rory. But for many of us, we teach a lot of people that hit their driver with a full-blown lunge and grunt 194. And if we can get that to 230, which is not even that egregious, we have changed their life forever. And that's what I feel like I do, is that I change people's life because I help them enjoy something they really love doing. And I do it with evidence and a caring delivery on how to get their game optimized. And it's their game they're comparing themselves to, not 2002 Tiger, not 2019 Rory McIlroy, not 1964 Jack Nicklaus. They're comparing it to them. That is my presentation with the evidence and how I use statistical data to help you get the best out of your players. Now I'd like to open it up, and there's literally nothing that I want it to be as interactive and as open as possible. So fire away your questions.
Virgil, you did have one that came through social media prior to this, and that is, I'd like to hear more on shaping a student's swing around their specific body type or their flexibility. I have too many students who come to me after watching YouTube videos and ruining their swings. Thanks, and looking forward to watching it.
Self-medicating. It's a disaster. YouTube is quite a phenomenon, because we can't expect the person who's struggling to know what their limitations are. So at the end of the day, a vast majority of people that play this game don't understand how to shallow the golf club and deliver it from the inside. And one of my biggest keys is that at the developmental stage of everybody's game, I will take as much speed as I can get, and I will use a foam blocker to make them swing under with as much power as they can. If they can do that, that's all I'm interested in. So how? If I'm dealing with somebody who is overweight, has to be bent over more because of themselves, we know that that's going to inhibit their ability to rotate. So that means they're going to have to use their arms in a rotational form to get the club to go around them. So I'm going to do everything I can to get that golf club so far behind them that even if they come over the top, it's still under the plane. Now, that's not my information. That's Jim Hardy. The plain truth. But his information, the first time I was with Jim Hardy, that moved my teaching into a very high level, because I stopped trying to make a person who can't swing it like Tiger. Why am I trying to get him to swing like Tiger? But I might shut his stance. I might get that golf club to feel like it's going around his belt. And I might make him swing until he figures it out how to get it underneath that foam. But if I can do that, I have helped that person enjoy the game infinitely. Now, obviously, there's like 4 or 5% of the people that play the game that are on the other side of that fence, that they got it too far inside, too stuck. I almost feel like people that are putting those YouTube videos out are demonstrating closer to conforming golf swings. And when people find out that they can't do that, they get lost. And once again, self-medicating in the golf swing is a disaster for most people. And that's what I see. Obviously TPI, I mean, I'm in a different situation because I got a TPI as trainer working for me here at the school. So all of my players know their physical limitations. All of my players know what they have to do to increase their hip agility, their ability to extend their spine, their ability to extend their hips, their ankle stabilities. Because really, there's one of the things that go away is that we deal with older people. The older clientele's ankle stability, foot stability to handle the ground forces of the golf swing are significantly compromised past the age of 55. That's one of the first places the body breaks down is foot and ankle stability. So we have to figure out ways to help them do that. And obviously, we can't force them to work out. We can't force them to do the routines. We can only provide them the information. But that's probably a long-winded version of an impossible question to really answer, because we're dealing with probably 2,000 variations of human body types and 2,000 different people watching one video and trying to make something out of it. I'm absolutely positive that the teacher who's asking this question is putting out good information, but the person who's taking in the information doesn't have his brain or her brain and can't put it all together. So that's how I look at it. I saw there's another question. So I'll go to Ted first. Ted, thank you. What creative ways or drills do you have to offer your players on short putts or lag putts? So I did this on the Golf Channel. There's one that I did. Jordan Spieth's drill is that he takes it at 50 feet and he breaks the putts up in 10-foot increments. And he puts a alignment stick or a golf club 3 feet behind the hole. And it's going uphill, downhill. So they're not flat putts. It's like a 40-foot putt or 50-foot putt on a tilt. So he starts at 10 feet putting down the hill. And then he has to hit 3 putts that either go in the hole or pass the hole but not pass the stick. And you're not allowed to turn around and putt back up the hill 40 feet until you do that. So now you're putting up the hill 40 feet, and all 3 of those putts have to get past the hole or in the hole, but not past the alignment stick. Then after you do that, you move up to the next one. You putt down 20, up 30. Then you go to vice versa, and you go 30 down, 20 up, and then you end at 40 down, 10 up. That's a great way to learn speed control at the golf course you're playing, which is the only one that you should really be paying too much attention to on lag speed, because I can tell you right now that Hillwood Country Club in Nashville, Tennessee is rolling about 12.7 on the stimp, and McCabe is rolling like 8.7 on the stimp. If you spend a lot of time working on your lag putting downhill at Hillwood, you will never get a putt to the hole at McCabe for a week. So it's one of those things that you just have to know that when you're working on your lag putting, you're doing it at the golf course that you're working on. When it comes to short putting, there's so many drills, man. I'm a big believer in the information provided. After Jackie Burke gave Phil Mickelson the 100 ball in a row drill from 3 feet in a circle, there was some data taken by some scientists, and they said that was an unfair task. And obviously he did it and whatever, but most people can't ever do that. But if we know that the average player misses 10 3-footers, then if we can make him miss only 8, he's better than he was. So he has to make 100 putts from 3 feet in 108 efforts. So I just like to use the data, give them an opportunity to fail, but it's not the end and they have to start over again. They get to start over again if they've missed 9, because that means they're performing worse than the person they're trying to be. So start over again. But I'm almost more inclined, because I'm spending most of my time coaching the team, the competition of forcing people to compete inside of 4 feet is more powerful than any drill that I could ever give. So if I could get any 2 people, 3 people to compete for something at that distance, it always works. Rob, I will try to get all this information. I'll send this to Paul, the data that I used, and then he'll put it out in an email so that people can see what I'm doing.
We'll have it. We can take that and put it as well on the website and just have it underneath your video. That way it's available when they watch it that way as well.
Perfect.
So, yep.
I'll get that out. I'll get that out as soon as we're done here. Thank you, Mark. Any other questions from anybody? Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Virgil. Great presentation again. We look forward to, we've got one more on the books scheduled for next week with Brad Redding, 5-time Tennessee PGA Teacher of the Year. He spent some time outside of the Tennessee section. Now he's back and excited to share some of his knowledge as well. That'll be next week. But again, thank you so much, Virgil, for your knowledge, your ability to present on this topic. I know that's a awesome topic, and we're just excited that we're able to have you here.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. Anybody have any questions, they can feel free to contact me on all the platforms possible. Thank you very much for the time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.